Back to the old PowerPoint presentation slides. Today's film review is going to be Howard the Duck, but I'm also going to talk about why the film failed. First, I'm going to give you my review. I liked Howard the Duck. I think the first half of the movie is a 10 out of 10. I think it's fantastic. And then the second half, not so much. For the first half of the film, at the beginning, we open up on Duck World. In Duck World, it's very similar to Earth. Well, the planet, it's shaped like an egg. The planet has 2 moons, kind of a reference to Star Wars, because the producer of this film is George Lucas. That's the first name you see in the credits. So you probably know how this film's going to turn out to be. Everyone on Duck World is a duck, a humanoid duck. They all wear clothes, shoes, stuff that you would find on humans. They also have a lot of famous American iconic propaganda that you would find here in the States on Duck World. So here in the U.S., we have Budweiser. It's a beer. Well, in Duck World, it's called Birdweiser. In Howard the Duck's apartment, you see a whole bunch of stuff. You see some movies and magazines that he's been in, some movies that he's been in. Here in the States, we have a film called Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. Well, in Duck World, Howard the Duck starred in a movie called Indiana Drake, Raiders of the Lost Stork. He's also in a magazine called Rolling Egg, which is a spoof of Rolling Stone. He also had a magazine called Play Duck, which is a spoof off Playboy. He also had a dollar bill, a $1 bill. Now, we all know who's on the $1 bill, George Washington, D.C. Well, in this movie, it's Marchington, D.C. Yeah, they take a lot of iconic American themes and they birdify it because it's Duck World. So anyway, Howard the Duck gets transported to Earth due to a science experiment gone wrong. In the first half of the movie, it's Howard the Duck finding his way around Earth, which is just fantastic. It's funny. You know, he's stubborn. He gets angry too. He gets angry. I mean, he can beat you up. He doesn't fight a couple of people here. He has a skill called Quack Fu. When he's a little duck, he's able to beat up grown men. It's just funny. Then he falls in love with Beverly Switzler. It's a weird, cringe relationship. I find it funny. So they go to the scientist. He tries to explain how he got here. The scientist takes a feather off of his tail, and then they analyze it. And a couple of scientists come back to Howard the Duck and Beverly's apartment, and then they bring him to the lab. And this is where the second half of the movie begins. The second half of the movie, it's okay, but not as good as the first half. So the first half of the movie is about a duck who's trying to find his way around Earth. He's trying to find a job, get a girlfriend, finding out where he's at. But in the second half of the movie, it turns into a heroic story how he has to fight off aliens and save the world. All right, the villains in this movie are called the Dark Overlord. They look pretty creepy. They're like mutant spiders with shark teeth. So Howard the Duck has to save the world and fight them off. I wasn't really a big fan of the Dark Overlords. It was okay, but the second half is more funnier than the first half is more funnier than the second half. The second half still has some funny parts. It just wasn't as strong as the first half of the film. So I'll give the second half of the film maybe a 7 out of 10. But overall, the film, I like it. I'll give it an 8. So I'm gonna tell you why the film failed. Preview, summary, backstory, production, cultural impact, and then the purpose. The summary: it's a sarcastic humanoid duck. He's pulled off his home world and he's sent to Earth. Meet the scientist and the female rock singer. Together they try to find him a way back home. The film stars Leah Thompson, Jeffrey Jones, and Tim Robbins. The backstory: Howard the Duck is a fictional character appearing in Marvel Comics. The character was created by writer Steve Gerber and artist Val Mayerick in 1973. Lucas stumbled upon the comic while he was working on the film American Graffiti in the 70s. He pitched the idea to Universal Studios after the success of Star Wars and Indiana Jones. Production: the film was rated PG and it lasted 101 minutes. Produced by George Lucas and directed by Willard Huyck. Huyck strongly felt that the film should be produced in animation, but Lucas suggested that the film could be produced in live action. Also, I think they were also contractually obligated to produce this film in live action too. Howard the Duck character was portrayed by several dwarf actors, most notably by Ed Gale. The voice was provided by Chip Zien. There's Howard the Duck. Look how tiny he is. He has this. I think the costume designers did a good job of making him live action. He does look like a real humanoid duck that you would see in real life. So I think they did a good job at that. It's funny that he's so tiny, but he can beat up a 6-foot adult. He'll stab the guy's ear once too. Cultural impact: the film bombed at the box office, making $1 million profit. The film is often considered one of the worst films of all time. It had a negative effect on the cast. Some people were unable to work on other projects because of the film. I feel bad for Jeffrey Jones, because he was in a movie called Ferris Bueller's Day Off, which was popular. I think that Jeffrey Jones's stardom would rise, but out came Howard the Duck in August, and he hasn't really been in much major films since then. Rumors circulated that the Universal production heads Frank Price and Sidney Sheinberg engaged in a fistfight after arguing who was to blame for greenlighting the film. Continuing with the cultural impact, Rotten Tomatoes gave the film a score of 15% on 48 reviews. Paul Atanasia, Washington Post, he's a top critic, says as you watch Howard the Duck, you get the vivid sensation that you're watching not a movie, a pile of money being poured down the drain. Phillips, Slate, top critic. As bad as you've heard, it's worse. The film received several Golden Raspberry Award nominations and won a Stinker's Bad Movie Award for Worst Picture. The character later turned to the big screen 2014 film Guardians of the Galaxy, which was released on the same day of Howard the Duck nearly 3 decades ago. The purpose is intended for kids, comedy, laughter, but it didn't turn out that way. Why? Because you have beer, you have cigars, you got like bestiality, you got like duck breasts in the movie. Just weird stuff here that you wouldn't find in a kid's movie. Like, I don't know if kids would be into that. Maybe they would. But remember, this is the 80s. This is George Lucas in the 80s. After his successes with Star Wars and Indiana Jones. The review. Live action film. It was released on August 1st, 1986. Produced by George Lucas. Howard, he lands on Earth, befriends a scientist and a singer. Tries to find his way home. Film bombed at box office, making $38 million. It's a $37 million budget. Bad reaction everywhere. Intended for kids, but had disturbing themes you wouldn't see in a kids' movie. And also, this film showed that George Lucas is fallible. He's not considered God like he was before this. So after 35 long years, you have my thoughts on Howard the Duck. I think it's a good movie, 8 out of 10. First half is, I think it's funny, fantastic, hilarious, 10 out of 10. Second half, it's okay. I give it a 7, so I guess the average is 8 out of 10 there. think this movie, I think it's one of those films that's so bad, but it's actually good. Like, I got this film on Easter. Such a coincidence, because on Easter, we got bunny rabbits and Easter eggs. The Howard the Duck DVD case, what's pictured on the front cover, an Easter egg. Now comes Howard the Duck. Will there be a sequel to this movie? I hope there is. I think Howard the Duck needs another movie. Let's bring it back to the big screen.